Welcome the anointed ones. The devil doesn't come dressed in red with horns. He comes as everything you ever trusted. And sometimes he's sitting at your dinner table asking for seconds. Chosen one. You weren't paranoid. You were precise. You weren't overthinking. You were overfeeling what no one else had the courage to admit. Because let's be brutally real. The human brain can detect a lie in less than 200 milliseconds. But your soul picked up their betrayal the moment they faked that smile and called you family. You knew, not because of some conspiracy theory, but because they were too consistent in their inconsistencies, too polished in their passive aggression, and too concerned about your mental health the moment you got close to the truth. They played innocent like it was a full-time job, and baby, they deserved an Oscar. Too bad karma just walked in as the director, and you brought the footage. Today's not just a story time. It's a spiritual crime scene report. And spoiler alert, the fingerprints match. So sit tight, because what you're about to hear will not only confirm what your gut screamed all along. It's going to prove you were never crazy. You were calibrated. Let's get into it. And don't be surprised if halfway through your jaw hits the floor. Number 1. They thought your intuition was a guess. But it was a surveillance system wired by the divine. You weren't just guessing. You were gathering evidence the whole time. Every weird look, every sudden mood switch, every time they slipped up and contradicted themselves, you caught it. You didn't say anything because you were watching. You didn't need cameras. Your intuition was already locked on surveillance mode. While they thought they were outsmarting you, you were busy connecting dots they didn't even know they were leaving behind. That's the thing people don't get about chosen ones. Your intuition isn't a feeling, it's a built-in tracking system. Divine intelligence, real-time alerts, and they had no clue they were being watched by your spirit long before they got caught. They assumed you were too soft, too kind, too spiritual to pick up on the game. That's where they messed up. They thought you were naive, when really you were highly aware. They thought silence meant stupidity, when really it meant strategy. You were letting them talk, lie, manipulate, so you could gather the entire puzzle, not just one piece. While they were making moves, you were tracking patterns. While they were rehearsing lies, you were remembering timelines. You didn't expose them right away because you didn't just want suspicion, you wanted certainty, and now that you've got it, the whole truth is collapsing on their heads. They saw your discernment as a weakness, but it was your strongest weapon. The ability to sense the truth without needing proof scared them. That's why they tried so hard to confuse you, to gaslight you, to shake your confidence. Because deep down they knew you knew. But now, the evidence has caught up with your insight. There's no more hiding. You're not just spiritually awake, you're 10 steps ahead. And when you finally turned around and said, "I knew it was you," the fear in their face said everything. You were never guessing. You were just letting them think they were safe. Number 2, they were so addicted to playing God with your life. They forgot you were in touch with the real one. They really thought they were running the show, playing God in your life like it was some game they had full control over, moving things around, causing drama, twisting stories behind the scenes, trying to control how other people saw you. They were so obsessed with manipulating everything around you that they forgot one critical thing. You're not just protected, you're connected, you're not alone, you're not running on your own strength. You've been plugged into something higher this whole time, and they had no idea. They didn't realize the same God they mocked, the same spiritual power they rolled their eyes at, was the one recording everything they did, every lie they told, every trap they set, every conversation they had behind your back. They thought they were being slick, but heaven was taking notes the entire time. While they were busy trying to alter your destiny, the real architect was watching them dig their own grave with every move. They thought they had the upper hand because they were louder, more connected in the physical world, more manipulative, but they never had access to your source. That's what kept you steady even when things didn't make sense. That's what gave you the strength to keep quiet, to move carefully, and to wait for the right moment. They weren't smarter than you. They were just more shameless with how far they were willing to go. And the truth is, that's not clever. That's dangerous. Because people who have no moral brakes will eventually drive straight into the wall. That's exactly what's happening now. Everything they did in the dark is being exposed. Their hands are red, and they're panicking because they finally see you weren't bluffing. You were protected by something way bigger than them. They tried to play God in your life, and now the real one is stepping in, and he doesn't play games. Number 3, you couldn't expose them before, because you were waiting for them to hang themselves with their own rope. You knew it was them early on. Your spirit picked up on things way before your mind could fully process it. The energy didn't match the words, the smiles were off, the timing of their reactions didn't add up. You weren't confused, you were just patient. You didn't speak up because you knew if you confronted them too soon, they'd twist it, deny it, and play victim so well, they might even convince others you were the problem. That's why you stayed quiet, not because you were afraid, but because you were smart enough to let the rope tighten. You let them think they were winning. You let them keep playing their little game, manipulating people, stirring up confusion, lying to your face with no shame. They thought they had you figured out. They mistook your silence for stupidity. What they didn't know was that you were playing the long game. You were letting them get sloppy. Because the truth is, guilty people always overplay their hand. The more they think you don't know, the bolder they get. And you knew that, so you let them dig their own trap. You gave them the space to show their real face. Now you've got the truth, not just in your gut, but in plain sight. No more guessing, no more suspicions. They exposed themselves, and the best part, you didn't have to lift a finger. They got too comfortable, too arrogant, and the truth spilled out of them like a confession they didn't mean to make. All you had to do was sit back and let time do what it always does, reveal. You didn't need revenge. You just needed patience. And now that everything is out in the open, you've got what most people never get, confirmation. You weren't crazy. You weren't overreacting. You were right. And now they know that you knew all along. There's no running from that. Number 4, they were never smarter than you, just willing to lie more convincingly. They were never smarter than you. The whole time they just lied better, more convincingly, more smoothly, more often. But lying isn't a sign of intelligence. It's a sign of desperation. They were scrambling to keep control, throwing out fake smiles and rehearsed stories like weapons. You didn't fall for it because you weren't confused or slow. You stayed true to your values and refused to stoop to their level. Your ethics kept you grounded, even when they tried to drag you into their game. Their charm was just a mask for panic. They knew their lies couldn't hold up forever. Lies rot from the inside out, and no matter how sweet their words sounded, the truth was there, smelling worse every day. You didn't need to expose them immediately because the decay was happening quietly, right under their noses. Even people who didn't know the full story started to notice something was off, an uneasy feeling that didn't go away. Now the truth stench is so strong it can't be ignored. The same people who once believed their stories are now pulling back, confused and disgusted. They're starting to realize that those smooth words were just a desperate attempt to cover up something rotten. The difference between you and them is simple. You never lost your integrity, even when it seemed easier to lie. They thought being convincing was the key to winning, but all they did was dig their own grave, and you're standing right there watching them fall into it. Number 5. They studied you to destroy you, but you studied them to survive. They spent all their energy studying you like you were some experiment to be broken. Every weakness, every hesitation. They analyzed it, timed your reactions, looking for the exact moment to strike. They thought they were in control, that they had your blueprint figured out. But what they didn't realize was that you weren't just sitting there waiting to be destroyed. You were learning, adapting, and building your own record of everything they did. You were watching, remembering, taking mental notes that no one else could see. Every wound they left on you wasn't just pain, it was proof. Proof of what they tried to do, how they tried to manipulate, how they underestimated you. Those scars became your evidence, and your memory became your witness. You weren't merely surviving, you were gathering everything you needed to expose them. They expected a victim, someone who would crumble quietly. Instead, they got a silent recorder, a living archive of their betrayal. Now the tables have turned. The mirror they held up to you is cracked, and you're holding it right back at them, reflecting every lie, every hurt, every betrayal they tried to hide. Their shock isn't just about being caught. It's about realizing they underestimated your strength. You weren't a target to be destroyed. You were a force waiting to be unleashed. And now the truth you documented so patiently is breaking free, loud and undeniable. Number 6. They wanted you to look crazy because they knew the truth would look criminal. The gaslighting wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a calculated strategy. They knew exactly what they were up against. Your truth. And that truth wasn't just inconvenient. It had the power to ruin them. They knew if people actually heard what you knew, if your story was believed, their carefully constructed lies would fall apart and expose them for the criminals they really are. So instead of facing that reality, they tried to discredit you. They labeled you unstable, dramatic, delusional, anything to make others doubt your voice before you could even speak it. It was all designed to isolate you, to make you question your own sanity. They wanted you to look like the problem because they couldn't afford for anyone else to see the real problem. Their whole survival depended on turning the spotlight away from themselves and shining it on you instead. The more they pushed, the more they twisted your words and actions, the harder they tried to convince the world that you were the one losing it. But now, the tables have turned. The truth you carried quietly inside you, the one they tried so hard to erase, is stepping out into the light. The masks they wore are cracking, and their frantic attempts to hide are no longer enough. They're the ones twitching under scrutiny, stumbling for answers, losing control. The ones who once made you doubt yourself are now the ones being doubted. Their strategy failed because your truth wasn't just noise. It was a warning. And now, everyone can see who the real criminals are. Number 7. You were never the threat. Your awareness was. They never feared what you might say or do. What truly terrified them was your awareness. Your anger could be loud and fiery, but your awakening was silent, sharp, and unstoppable. When you became conscious of their games, their manipulations, and their masks, you didn't just recognize the lies. You saw the pain and fear behind those lies. You understood the wound they carried, the deep insecurities they tried to bury by projecting them onto you. That kind of insight cuts deeper than any confrontation because it strips away their power completely. What scared them most was that awareness can't be fooled. They could lie, deceive, and manipulate others easily. But once your mind and soul were awake, their tricks stopped working. You were no longer a player on their board. They were the ones being outmaneuvered. They realized that no amount of twisting facts or spinning stories could control someone who sees the full picture. And that realization shattered their sense of control. They feared your awakening because it meant their illusions were exposed. Their secrets were vulnerable, and their grip on power was slipping. You became the threat not because you were loud or aggressive, but because your consciousness was too clear, too deep, and too real. When someone like that rises, no lie sticks, no manipulation holds, and no mask hides the truth. That is what made you unstoppable, and that is why they feared you more than anything else. Number 8. The reason they faked love was because real love would have exposed them instantly. They never truly loved you, not because you weren't worthy, but because real love would have exposed everything they were trying to hide. Genuine love demands honesty, vulnerability, and respect, and those things would have shown a harsh light on their lies and manipulations. They knew that if they showed you real love, you would have seen the cracks in their facade immediately. So instead they gave you a fake version, a twisted imitation designed to keep you trapped and confused. This counterfeit love came wrapped in guilt trips, control tactics, and emotional manipulation. It wasn't about caring or connection. It was a strategic disguise meant to keep you off balance and doubting your own reality. They fed you just enough affection to keep you hooked, but withheld the genuine warmth that would have made their deceit impossible to ignore. It was psychological warfare disguised as affection, a cruel game to wear down your defenses and keep you questioning. But masks can't hold forever, especially when the truth is ready to break free. That fake love, no matter how well crafted, began to slip. Maybe it was a careless word, a hidden look, or a moment of silence where their true intentions screamed louder than any lie. Suddenly, the mask fell mid-sentence, revealing the cold calculation beneath. What you once thought was love turned out to be nothing more than another weapon they wielded to keep control. Now, with the mask off, you see clearly. You know what was real and what was a lie. And that realization isn't just freeing, it's powerful. Because you were never fooled by their fake love. You just needed time to see past it. And now that you have, there's no going back. Number 9. They didn't just cross boundaries. They dismantled them on purpose to monitor you. They didn't just step over the line. They tore the line down completely, brick by brick, just so they could keep an eye on you. This wasn't a simple betrayal or a moment of weakness. It was a calculated invasion into every part of your life. They didn't respect your space, your feelings, or your thoughts. Instead, they dissected your mind, probed your emotions, and invaded your dreams. Not out of concern or care, but because control was their only goal. Every secret they uncovered, every vulnerability they exposed, was a weapon in their hands. They wanted to predict your moves, manipulate your decisions, and keep you locked in their grip. The boundaries you had were meaningless to them because boundaries meant independence, and independence was their enemy. So they dismantled those walls with cold precision, hoping to keep you trapped in their world of manipulation. But here's the thing. Catching them red-handed wasn't just luck. It wasn't random chance. It was the universe, or karma, calling in what was owed. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, every time they tried to pull strings behind your back, it only tightened the noose around their own necks. They created their own downfall by overreaching. You weren't blind to their tactics. You were watching, remembering, waiting. Now the tables have turned. The full-scale invasion they launched is now evidence stacked against them. They wanted to monitor you, but they forgot one crucial thing. Those they try to control often become the most dangerous opponents. And you're ready. The boundary they destroyed was rebuilt in your strength, and it's unbreakable. Number 10. You played the fool to a narcissist, but that was your most strategic role. You played the fool, and not because you were naive, but because you were smarter than anyone gave you credit for. You let them believe they had you figured out, that you were clueless, harmless, easy to manipulate. You nodded along, smiled through the charade, and agreed just enough to keep the act believable. But behind that calm exterior, you were doing something far more powerful. You were collecting every red flag, every lie, every slip-up like priceless souvenirs. You understood that exposing them too soon would have been pointless. Without the right timing, truth can fall flat. It can be dismissed, ignored, or twisted. So instead of rushing in, you chose patience, turning your silence into a weapon. You created a false sense of security for them, making them feel untouchable, encouraging them to drop their guard and reveal their true colors, and reveal themselves they did. Because when someone thinks they're safe, they act without filters, without shame. Their masks slip, their defenses crumble, and all the secrets they worked so hard to hide spill out. You knew that all along. You weren't just surviving. You were orchestrating the moment when their house of cards would collapse, with you watching every move. This wasn't weakness. It was strategy. You were the calm in the storm, the quiet force behind the curtain, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to flip the script. And now that moment is here. They thought they were fooling you, but the real fool was anyone who underestimated your patience and your power. Number 11. They projected their darkness onto you because your light made them feel diseased. They couldn't stand looking at you because you reflected back something they desperately wanted to hide, their own darkness. You weren't their enemy because of your mistakes or imperfections. No, what scared them was your clarity, the way your light exposed what they buried deep inside. You were a mirror they didn't want to face, so instead of confronting their own flaws, they tried to shove those shadows onto you. They projected their shame, guilt, and ugly secrets, hoping you'd absorb it all and break under the weight. They wanted you to feel diseased by association, to doubt yourself so completely that you'd stop shining altogether. Their plan was to make you carry the burden of their sins, to bury your truth beneath their lies. But your light isn't something they can snuff out. It's sharp, relentless, and precise, cutting through every lie, every manipulation with surgical accuracy. Instead of shrinking away, your clarity has only grown stronger. Now that light they feared so much is reflecting back on them in full force, exposing their darkness for everyone to see. What they projected onto you has become their own undoing. You didn't just survive their attempts to dim you. You turned their hate into illumination. And that's why they hate you even more now. Because your light doesn't just expose them, it frees you. Number 12. They created chaos to distract you from the pattern, but you mapped it anyway. Every time they stirred up chaos, whether through heated arguments, confusing stories, or guilt trips, they weren't just being reckless or emotional. They were throwing smoke grenades, trying to cloud your mind and keep you from seeing the bigger picture. The noise, the drama, the emotional whirlwinds, they hoped it would distract you, overwhelm you, and make you lose sight of what was really going on. But you didn't let it work. Your mind stayed sharp, even when everything around you felt like a storm. While they were busy creating distractions, you were quietly piecing things together, assembling a pattern they never wanted you to see. Every outburst, every manipulation, every contradiction became another piece of the puzzle you were putting together. You saw beyond the chaos, connecting dots they thought you'd never notice. Now that pattern is complete. You've mapped out their moves, their lies, and their tactics in a timeline so clear it's undeniable. The chaos they created to hide the truth is now the very thing that reveals it. Instead of being lost in confusion, you're standing tall with a full understanding of how they operated, and more importantly, how they failed. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about clarity and control. While they wasted energy creating distractions, you used that energy to build a case against them. And now that you have the full picture, there's no running, no hiding. The truth is laid out, and you're the one holding the map. Number 13. They laughed when you said you were spiritual. Until that same spirit gave you supernatural discernment. They laughed at you when you talked about being spiritual, acting like your faith and intuition were some kind of joke or fantasy. They smirked behind your back, calling it weird or naive, as if believing in something beyond the surface made you weak or out of touch. But here's the thing. They seriously underestimated what that spirit inside you was capable of. What they saw as a soft, airy belief turned into something razor-sharp and unrelenting. Your so-called weird intuition transformed into a forensic tool, a sixth sense that cuts through the noise and reveals the truth in brutal detail. You don't just sense when something's off anymore. You see exactly who's behind the deception, how they did it, and why they thought they could get away with it. This isn't some random gut feeling or wild guess. It's divine intelligence, a clarity that comes from something deeper than logic or reason. It's a kind of supernatural discernment that exposes hidden agendas and secrets, leaving no room for lies to hide. And that's why they're scared now. Their smirks have faded because they know you're not fooled anymore. Your spirit didn't just survive their attacks, it evolved into a powerful weapon, and while they were busy mocking you, you were quietly sharpening the very skill that's now turning their world upside down. That's the real power of being spiritual. It's not about blind faith. It's about seeing the unseen and knowing the unknowable. And you've got that gift in full force. Number 14, now that you have proof. They're suddenly quiet, scared, and spiritual. Now that the truth is out and you're holding the receipts, everything's changed. The same people who once mocked you, labeled you paranoid, dramatic, or unstable, are suddenly quiet. Not just quiet, but nervous. Spiritual even. Like out of nowhere, they've found God, quoting scriptures and talking about energy and peace. But don't be fooled. It's not repentance. It's fear. They don't care about the damage they caused. They're just terrified that now you hold the power to expose it. These were the bold ones before, the loud manipulators, the gaslighters, the charmers who weaponized your kindness and dismissed your voice. They had no problem laughing in your face, lying with confidence, and spinning narratives that made you question your own reality. But now that you've got proof, undeniable, time-stamped, and truth-dripping proof, they've ghosted. Suddenly they can't look you in the eye. Suddenly they're unavailable, unbothered, working on themselves. But they're not healing, they're hiding. Because your silence now doesn't come from confusion or defeat. It comes from choice. It comes from understanding that sometimes the most terrifying sound is no sound at all, especially when it's coming from someone who used to cry and scream just to be believed. You're not fighting for acknowledgement anymore. You already have it. You're not begging for clarity anymore. You are the clarity, and they know that. That's why they're scared. Because Judgment Day isn't about you yelling from rooftops or confronting them in public. It's about what's coming without a word. It's the dread of knowing they can't predict your next move. They used to feel so confident when you were vulnerable. But now that you're grounded, calm, and watching, every second of your silence feels like a ticking clock. And deep down, they know. When it strikes, they won't be able to outrun what's coming. You were never imagining it. You were just ahead of it. That's the truth they can't stand. The game they played, the lies they told, the chaos they created. It all made sense now because you finally have the full picture. And that picture? It's sharp, it's loud, and it's damning. They once moved in shadows thinking you were blind, not realizing you were documenting every movement in silence. And now, the silence they once used against you has turned into a storm they can't outrun. You weren't paranoid. You were precise. You weren't emotional. You were evolving. You weren't weak. You were wise enough to wait for the right moment. And now that moment has arrived. Not with screaming, not with drama, but with a calm presence that speaks louder than any accusation. Because truth, when it's mature, doesn't need to announce itself. It simply arrives. They mocked your intuition, they tested your spirit, and they tried to bury you in confusion. But you became something they can't define and definitely can't defeat. Self-aware. And that's the part they never prepared for. A version of you that no longer reacts, but responds with discernment, grace, and unapologetic clarity. This isn't revenge, it's revelation. It's the moment the hunted becomes the observer. The scapegoat becomes the story they can't rewrite, and the one they tried to destroy becomes the evidence of everything they fear being exposed. So let them stay quiet. Let them get spiritual. Let them try to move on. You don't need an audience anymore. You are the proof. You are the verdict. And the best part, you didn't just survive it. You mapped it, named it, and outgrew it. This is your power. This is your closure. And this is just the beginning. If this hit home for you, don't just sit with it, grow with it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another deep, real, and raw message like this. Like the video if you felt seen today. Comment below and let us know what resonated the most. Your voice matters here. And if you know someone who's been through the fire like you, share this with them. Don't keep the truth to yourself. Pass it on. You're not crazy. You're not alone. You're just waking up. And around here, we see you. We got you. Until next time, stay sharp, stay spiritual, and stay unapologetically you. Let's keep exposing the dark together.